Welcome back. I will now walk you through our competence editor. So the competence editor or competence management you find under competences in the menu panel, and then you will get to this page. So on this page, you see the entire overview of all the competences that are in your portal and in your survey. And as you can see, all the competences are divided into groups, and each group with its own level. So, for example, digital competence areas here, this is a group on its own. That group has level 2. The digital competences down here, this is also a group on its own. It's a group with quite a lot of competence in it, but this is set to level 3. I will get back to how the levels work in just a little bit. Up here in the corner, you have this little box that says Competence Groups. And this is where you have the entire list of all the competence groups that are in your portal. And this is also where you add new groups by pressing Add New Group. So let's just try and press one of the groups, and then you can see how it works. So we'll press Digital Competence Areas here. And here you can see that you can give it a title. You can also change the title of this one if you want to. You set it to whether it's primary competence or whether it's not a primary competence. We'll also get back to how that works with the primary competences. And this is also where you set the level. And here you can also give it a description of the competence types. So that's how that works. So you can group your competences and competence areas, which will be reflected on your result page and on your front page as well. So I'll just show you how it will be reflected on the front page, for example. If we go here, you can see that the way that you group your competences will be reflected on this page. And either it will be reflected inside the wheel, or it will be reflected outside the wheel, or not reflected at all. So let's go back and I will just explain to you how it works. So what you do is you choose the group of competences which you want shown inside the wheel itself. These you set as your primary competences. So this means that, for example, what you see here, this list of competences that we have in this group, the ones called digital competences, they're all set as primary competences. And that means that all the competences that are in this group will be reflected inside the wheel on the front page and on the result page. The level you give these competences kind of becomes the organizing principle of how you work with all the other competences. So this means that all the competence groups that you set above the level of the group of your primary competences, so in this case level 3, they will be shown on the front page and the result page, but outside the wheel. So in this case, it is the digital competence areas. They're set at level 2. And the digital competence areas were the ones that you saw outside the wheel, to the left of the wheel on the front page. On the contrary, all competence groups that you set below the level of the primary competences, in this case, everything below level 3, will be invisible to the users. So these competences and competence groups will not be reflected anywhere, but you will still be able to use them in your reporting as administrators. So you don't have to set the primary competences at level 3. You can set it at whatever level you want. You can set it at level 5, level 10, that's completely up to you. But the important thing to remember is that everything above the level of your primary competences shown on the wheel, everything below the level of your primary competences will not be shown on front page or the result page. So now I'm just going to show you how to add a new competence group, and then we'll just see how that works. So we'll press Add New Group over here, and then we'll just give it a title. We'll call it Test Group. And then you choose whether or not you want that group to be primary or not. For the sake of this, we're just going to choose it as not primary. Then you give it a level. So we're going to give it level 1. And down here, you can add a description to the competence type if you want to. That description will just be shown right underneath the title of the competence area. But yeah, so we'll just press here, and now it should have added the competence group. The competence group won't be shown on the overview here until you start adding competences to it. But you can still see it over here. So you can see that the group we just created, called test group, is now reflected in the drop-down menu up here. Now we'll move on to show you how you edit the competences and also how you connect it to a competence group. In this case, we will make it appear on the front page and you can see how that works. So we're just going to clone, for example, search. I'm going to take that. We're going to clone it. I'm going to press OK. And then the clone is down here. So I am going to change the name of it just for the sake of this. Call it test competence. So what you can do here is that this is where you choose the competence type. So the competence type is what group you want the competence to belong to. So what we're going to do now is we're going to choose from the drop-down menu here, and we're going to choose the test group that we just created. I'm going to call it test competence. And because it's cloned, there will already be some information here. You can create a new competence from scratch if you want to. Otherwise, just clone the competences and remember to change the information in that competence that you just cloned. So here we're just going to call it test. You can choose what order you want it in. You can also choose what color you want to give your competence. Remember, it's basic RGB code for this as well. You can choose what icon you want for that competence. It's still connected to the Font Awesome database. And here you can also give it a competence description and relevance. So we're just gonna see how it works. So now it has saved. And as you can see now, the competence group that we just created before is now visible on this page because we just connected a competence to it. So because we set this test group to level 1, which means we set it above the level of our primary competences, the ones inside the wheel, this competence will be shown on the front page now and on the result page. So now, as you see, we have an entirely new group of competences that are shown on the front page and on the result page. If you had set it below 3, it wouldn't have turned up, but you would still be able to use it in reporting and the competence here would still be visible there. What you can also do with the competences, if you want to, is you can give it a benchmark score. So the benchmark score is related to the analyzer that I showed you in the report module. And I will just show you how you can use the benchmark score for competences in relation to the analyzer. So you can, for example, use this field if you have like a specific score that you would like to be the benchmark for specific competences. So we're going to do it with another competence because we don't have any data on the test competence. So we're just going to choose search, for example. And then we'll set the benchmark score to 50. For example, so when you set a score at 50 and go into the analyzer, you will be able to see that it now has added a benchmark bar at the top. So we'll just try it out and then you can see how it works. So we'll go into a report. We're just going to do a random report and we're gonna use the analyzer. I'm gonna press here, press the analyzer. And now you can see that it has the benchmark bar at the top. So you can see the green bar down here, which is the one representing search. That is the competence that we just put in the benchmark score on. You can see that it's green. And because it's green, that means that they have scored above the benchmark that you just set. You can also hold the cursor over, all the bars are gray because we haven't set any benchmarks for any of them. But when you do set benchmarks, they will get a color reflecting how well the respondents match the benchmark or not. So because this is green, as you can see, the score is 52.1. They have scored above the benchmark. And you can always see the color, the benchmark color scheme. You can see that up here. It's really cool if you have like specific benchmark scores in mind for specific competences, then you will be able to measure whether your respondents can match that benchmark or not, and like where they need to work on specific competences. So now we're just gonna go back. I'm gonna close this. And we're gonna go back to the competences here. So the last thing I'm going to show you in relation to competences are the related questions tab. So the related questions tab you find on all the competences. We're just going to choose search. And that tab is what you see up here. So if we press this tab, here you can see what questions are related to that specific competence. And this is also where you can choose whether or not you want different questions. You can add questions here, you can delete them, stuff like that. But this is where you see the entire overview of all the questions that are related to that specific competence. So on the right here, you see that all the questions are weight. They have a number here in relation to weight. And this number indicate how important each question is for that score on every competence. So if all questions weigh 100, for example, then all questions are equally important for the score for this specific competence. We recommend either just setting them all to 100, or you can also keep the scores of the pre-existing competences if you want to. When building a completely new survey framework from scratch, it's sometimes easier to just set them all to 100. But you can weight them if you want to. It's real cool if you know that there are some questions that are more important than others for the score of a specific competence, for example.